I know what the problem of the original 1986 Flight of the Navigator film by Walt Disney, one of my all-time favorites from childhood, is that it wasn't helmed by a female. That's right. That problem is about to be solved. In Flight of the Navigator, maybe you haven't seen it. It's kind of a cult classic, though, and I think, back in, it was probably like 2016, 2017, Disney kind of announced that it wanted to remake the film. And I thought, well, it's definitely not going to be, the main character is definitely not going to be a boy. It's probably not going to be white, because that's the only recipe that Disney has and most of these companies have to remaking things. I mean, they remade The Wonder Years, okay? One of my all-time favorite shows as a child. Didn't need to get remade at all. Never needed to get remade. Remaking it anyway, but some galaxy brain, maybe they live on my set, decided, well, what if everyone was black? That definitely would be a better version of The Wonder Years. I mean, didn't we have that with Everybody Hates Chris or like Bernie Mac? These are good shows. I like both of them. Well, Bernie Mac I watched. Everybody Hates Chris, I don't know if that was on cable or I only saw reruns occasionally of it, but I like the Bernie Mac show. Obviously, Fresh Prince. There are a lot of family shows like that. But for whatever reason, that has to be race swapped. A new report now claims that Walt Disney will reboot the 80s sci-fi film Flight of the Navigator with a gender swap. The Hollywood Reporter's Boris Kitt claims Bryce Dallas Howard is attached to produce a female-led reimagining of the 1986 kid sci-fi adventure movie for Walt Disney Studios. Kidd also asks, in the new iteration, the protagonist will be female, though, although it is unclear if the age bracket will change as well. Definitely won't be a redhead. Probably won't be white. Do I need to see white characters in films to feel validated? No. I mean, as a fat guy, when I saw the new God of War Ragnarok and they had, ooh, look, a fat character, I didn't feel more validated by another fat guy in video games. I never felt validated by Chris Farley or John Candy on screen. They're just regular people to me. Now, some far leftists might say, well, that's because, you're white and you've seen all these white people in cinema. I don't know. Maybe. But I certainly consumed a lot of diverse content over the years. One of my all-time favorite shows is Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And there were literally no white people in that show. Still loved it, shockingly. So I don't understand this. Like, reboot, was the character being a white male like contingent to the story, important to the story? No. But if that's true, then why change it? Right? A previous reboot of the film had been reported back in 2017. At the time, Lucifer showrunner John Henderson had been reportedly tapped to write the film's script. God, I remember. I need to rewatch this film now. In 2009, Arrested Development's Brad Copeland had been hired to write a draft of the remake for the film as well. Then in 2021, Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly were hired to write another script, with Trevorrow more than likely expected to take on directing duties. Clearly, none of these projects got off the ground. So 3 different times they've been trying to reboot it. Now somebody came along and they're like, but what if the character was a female? The original Flight of the Navigator was written by Mark H. Baker, Michael Burton, and Phil Joannou, and directed by Kendall Kleiser. It starred Joey Kramer as David Freeman, a 12-year-old boy who was abducted by an alien in 1978 and transported 8 years into the future to 1986. Upon arriving in 86, he's eventually reunited with his family, but not for long, as NASA officials discover a link between Freeman and a crashed UFO they recovered. NASA scientists soon discover that Freeman actually traveled to the alien planet of Phelan and acquired extensive alien information now stored in his mind. After receiving a telepathic communication from the spaceship, Freeman boards the ship and is able to escape the NASA scientists and assist the ship's robotic commander named Max, loved Max, on the mission to collect biological specimens and take them to Phelan for analysis. Specifically, Friedman takes part in mind transfer to allow Max to access star charts and other information in Dave's head. Max has lost access to the information when he crash landed on Earth. They two of them team up and try to reunite Dave with his family. However, nasty. I don't want to try to ruin the movie for you. The original film has a 6.9 weighted average from IMDb. It's currently available to watch on Disney Plus. What I can say is this: watch the original. And don't watch it on Disney Plus unless you already pay for it. I mean, this is a classic film. God, I mean, is that how we're all going to be? We're all going to turn into our parents? Every time I say, like, oh, they just don't make movies like they used to, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what my dad used to say. To me, it's not necessarily about all the swapping and stuff like that. It's the wholesomeness. Like, name another film like Sandlot that got created. Will movies today be remembered like movies during our youth? You know what movies I'm always going to remember that I don't know if they ever got awards or not, but they probably didn't. Like Batteries Not Included, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Tremors, Critters, anything made in the 80s practically. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Roadhouse, all the Missing in Action movies. I look back and I can remember all of those. Now, maybe some of them aren't as like wildly popular as the others, but like, what modern films do you think people are going to look back at and think fondly of? Are they going to say, remember that remake of Flight of the Navigator? Wasn't it awesome? Remember that Terminator where Sarah Connor was the lead, and then there's like culturally diverse, and they had all those FEMA camps with people in cages. Remember that? Nobody's going to remember that. They're going to remember Terminator 2. Do you think people are going to remember Predator 5, which, by the way, just wrapped filming? Nobody's going to remember Predator 5, but they'll all remember the original Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger and what's the guy? The guy that played Apollo Creed was in that. Jesse Ventura was in it, wasn't he? You have like iconic casts, and like it's like Hollywood doesn't have anything new to say because they've been so obsessed with rehashing, rebooting, and being culturally inclusive. They forgot how to be creative, and they realized that people don't actually care about characters that look like them in movies. They care about good movies, and you don't need somebody who looks like you for that to be the case. I just wish that Hollywood would understand that, or that somebody would take up the mantle and get to work on creating great movies again, instead of just worrying about creating movies to win awards, which is essentially all these losers do nowadays. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.